Hi, and welcome to episode 2 of the Podium. I'm your host, Caleb Robbins, with my friend and my co-host, Seth Stein. Seth, how are we doing today?
Doing great. Happy we get to talk about sports today. Talk about it any day of the week. It's almost the weekend, and it's going to be fun.
Yeah, and I love that we talked about NFL and college football last week, but I think we're going to mix it up a bit this week. Specifically about baseball,
Yes.
The legendary Shohei Ohtani.
Whole talk of the week.
Before we listen to this clip, what he's done while being injured this year, not being able to pitch, what does that say about the game of baseball?
I think it shows how it's always changing. There's something new happening. Baseball's been around for hundreds of years. And, this is the first time in over 100 years that someone's ever hit 50 home runs and had 50 stolen bases. And including that, he's still climbing. Not saying he's going to get 60-60, but he might have a 55-55, which is even insane to think about. But it's been crazy to watch what he's done. I mean, I have a lot of opinions on Ohtani, but let's take a look at this clip.
On a 1-2, Ohtani sends one in the air, the other way, back it goes, gone! One-of-a-kind player, one-of-a-kind season. Shohei Ohtani starts the 50-50 club.
Well, as we saw here on the play call of the 50-50 home run, it was a great call. I don't remember the announcer's name, but, he was right. Shohei is a one-of-a-kind player, and he's had one-of-a-kind season. Not being able to pitch is, very tragic. As a former pitcher, I know what it's like to not be able to go out there due to injury. And Shohei's making the best of what he can do. And, being a DH and, possibly being able to field, I remember that was a possibility coming into the season. I don't know if he actually has or hasn't done that. But, being able to, be a demon on the base path and at the plate, I think it's pretty cool to see.
And speaking of commentating, I think we should just recognize that Vince Scully, the legendary Los Angeles Dodgers and Brooklyn Dodgers announcer, would have loved to call this, because Shohei doesn't just represent baseball, he represents the world and Japan.
Especially Japan.
And when you see these games filled with individuals with Ohtani jerseys, it brings the excitement back to the game. And I know that for years I've talked about, as I love baseball, the decrease in fan attendance.
Mm-hmm.
And it's bothered me, and it's made me upset. And I saw something that this past June, it was one of the best months in 20 years for fan attendance. And even though it may not seem like the popularity is changing, people want to see Shohei.
I agree.
And people want to see baseball. And it gets me excited for the playoffs.
I can touch on that really quickly in, I want to say the end of May, end of May. I was in Cincinnati for a Reds game, and they were happening to play the Dodgers. And, I mean, I've been a Reds fan my whole life, and, attendance isn't always the best. But that game, it was packed. Dodgers fans everywhere you went. And it just shows to go how popular Ohtani's name is around the world. And people literally travel from everywhere to come see him play. You could literally be a family in, Tennessee and, drive either to Missouri or Cincinnati for a baseball game just to go see him. I think it's pretty crazy. The play call here was great, but I really want to touch on this other clip. So let's check it out really quick.
We all are watching this guy. Oh my gosh! Shohei Ohtani! The greatest day in baseball history!
As you can see, Shohei hit 3 home runs in the night he hit the 50 home run. He went 6 for 6, which is, even nuts. I remember I was with you, and we just thought that was absolutely crazy. Personally, I don't really like this call compared to the actual 50th home run call. The announcer said it's the greatest day in baseball. I didn't like that use of the words. I think it was a pivotal moment in baseball and a monumental moment. Not the greatest day, because just like achieving 50-50 for the first time, there are so many more things to unlock and so many other players to do that. Like Ellie De La Cruz is on a tear. He might be the quickest person to like get a certain amount of stolen bases in a certain amount of time at some point, because that's how quick he is. He's already at 100 stolen bases, and he himself is just in a year and a half of his career. So I think that's pretty crazy. So I just didn't like the taste of the words there.
And I'm glad you touched on this, because when we're talking about baseball history, I see it as a competition and I see it as postseason.
Yeah.
And it cannot be the greatest day of baseball history. I don't care if someone goes 6 for 6. I don't care if it's a perfect game or no hitter. The win and the result is what matters, in my opinion.
Also,
I think
while they're dominating the Marlins in that game, I think they won like 15-3 or something like that. While going 6 for 6, he actually helped the Dodgers clinch the postseason. It wasn't like we didn't know they weren't going to make the postseason. It's the Dodgers. They've been dominant for years. Yeah, continue.
And I think that when it says, in the quote we just listened to, this is not real life, he's not human, really encapsulates who Shohei Ohtani is.
Oh, yeah. And he was like laughing into the dugout. I mean, it just shows his personality.
It's just his personality in LA with those players, with Mookie. I know I'm pretty sure it was a couple weeks ago, his opponent walked him, and then Mookie hit a grand slam, or Mookie hit a walk-off.
Yeah.
And it shows kind of that death row, you could say, of those Dodgers just hitters.
Dangerous team.
And they can hit dingers. And I think that Shohei just does so much for the game and the excitement, and you see him in interviews. I know there was the whole thing with the interpreter this year, which kind of encapsulated a lot of the offseason and his contract that he got, and people don't really talk about it enough.
I think
$700 million.
I think this season had itself, like Shohei took weight off of the MLB's shoulders because of that. I mean, like they weren't going to go investigate their moneymaker. That's their everything. This is the guy who's making this league money at the moment. They're not going to go investigate him because of this. Obviously, if they wanted to, they could go find something. But I think him building off of this season to be able to achieve 50-50, I think really helped the MLB.
And I think this is a great time to move into the same game.
Yeah.
Let's take a listen to his opponent, the Miami Marlins manager Skip Schumacher, on his decision to not walk Ohtani.
I think that's a bad move, baseball-wise, karma-wise, baseball god-wise. You go after him and see if you can get him out. And I think out of respect for the game, we're going to go after him.
What I love about this is it shows the integrity of the game. It really exemplifies what the Marlins want for baseball. And although the Marlins have not been successful, Derek Jeter was an owner. We know how that went. Giancarlo, Christian Yelich, they had all these MVPs, Jazz, who have maybe performed decently for them and then gone elsewhere and been incredible, and haven't really helped them to wins and success. But when you have a monumental moment in baseball history, walking someone, especially as the Marlins don't have a shot to make the playoffs, it really wouldn't be a great look.
It shows fear and like some type of just like scaredy cat kind of vibe. Like I know the Marlins aren't the best. They've struggled through years. They've had high moments. They've had low moments. I don't think this is either a high or a low moment. I just think this wasn't even them. I think it was a moment for the Dodgers, and I think Skip spoke really well about it. And I agree with what he said. I think it would be a bad move for baseball wise. And just everything. Like, you don't want to look scared of your opponent. It's one thing to intentionally walk, one person for a specific play, but it's another thing just to avoid so you're not the team that is known as he hit the 50-50 on.
And what I love about this quote is not even the fact that they pitched to him. He said, I think out of respect for him, we will go after him.
Yeah.
That's a misconception. They're not just pitching 95-mile-per-hour fastballs right in the zone inside. No. They're trying to get him out. And even though, yes, they did not get him out, we know that 6 for 6, incredible day, he went after him. And I think that that shows a lot about your integrity as a manager. And I think that even this simple quote that probably lasted 20 seconds can propel the Marlins to see what they want for the future. Because I'm not really sure. I don't know how long Skip Schumacher has been there. But managers can't keep piling out when you're not winning because you're not really going to find one. And I think being a manager in the MLB is tough because you may not see it at face value that you have to make many decisions. But
you do.
When you go to the postseason, an 84-win team can win and an 100-win team can win.
Yeah. Weren't the Diamondbacks last year like an 84, 83 win team?
Yeah.
They went to the World Series.
Exactly. And I don't want to stray away too much about our goal of the podcast to listen to press conferences. But one of the amazing things about baseball, which no one talks about, is the general manager and the manager. Because just as I mentioned, you could have an incredible regular season, just like the Dodgers did a couple years ago, and lose in the divisional.
Flunk it out.
It is based on these decisions, the prospects in September, consistency, having a full team. Think about the 2013 Tigers.
October.
Exactly. Think about the 2013 Tigers. They had an incredible lineup, probably the best starting rotation I've ever seen in my life. They're bullpen.
Yeah.
That's why you don't win. Complete teams win. Great teams don't.
Also, to go off of what Skip Schumacher said at the end of the quote, he said that he's the most talented player. Shohei's the most talented player he's ever seen. And I agree. And the fact that they went after him and were competitive, it's not easy to hit home runs in Major League Baseball. And Shohei went up to plate knowing he was going to go hit a home run. It's not easy, thinking that you can go hit a big pop-up. He went up to plate, hit it out of the park. And it shows the confidence and the type of player he is. And I agree with Skip here when he said, if he has a couple more of these peak years, he might be the best player we have ever seen play the game.
Yeah, and exactly what he's talking about. Shohei most likely will come back to pitch next year.
Yeah.
It will be interesting to see how well he does in the lineup, how the Dodgers play him, because the Dodgers have such a great team. To be honest, they don't even have to play him
as pitcher. He could play left field.
They don't even have to bat him as much. They're going to be able to load manage, I guess you could say, because there's no rules on that. And I think Shohei will be down for that because it's clear he cares about winning.
I think something important with Shohei is what would they do with him next year is how they conserve his energy. Because, being a pitcher in DH every day, pitchers need their rest. And yes, Shohei doesn't have to be a DH every day, but it's still a lot to go out there and, move your hips the way you do with hitting and move your hips the way you do with pitching. Because Shohei pitches a little differently. Obviously, Japanese baseball's, they play a little different. I mean, his hitting style is definitely different. And they need to conserve his energy, I think, next season. And I'm very curious to see how they do that.
I agree. And I think that the Dodgers have that luxury by conserving energy. And it brings me to another point that he's still a relatively young guy, getting into his 30s. How many more years can he be a pitcher and a hitter? Because he also started at a young age. A lot of Japanese baseball players start, they learn, they shift their weight differently. It's a very different culture of baseball there. Baseball is really number one. And I think it's going to be interesting to see if he can do that in the long term. And I think that this should bring us into another topic. Let's go back into the NFL and let's take a listen to what Antonio Pierce said after the loss to the Panthers on Sunday.
I think it was a team. I think there was definitely some individuals that made business decisions. And we'll make business decisions going forward as well.
Looking at this, we really see the disgust in Antonio's face, how he said individuals made some business decisions, and we're going to make some business decisions as well. You can take that for what it's worth. I think we're here to interpret it. I interpret it as he's not happy with his team. Players clearly weren't putting in 100%. That's really the main goal of this comment. And it could be evident in Jack Jones. I've been seeing around the internet, him not hustling, him not being ready, him not being aware, especially tackling. Because with quarterbacks don't want to get injured. Quarterbacks don't want to get that ankle, that Achilles, that ACL. But if there's a running back going at you, you gotta lower your body and make that tackle. And there were numerous, I'm pretty sure 5 times, where Jack Jones was standing there, not even running, and he's a finesse player. Some could call him a budding superstar. When you're playing for the Raiders and a coach like Antonio Pierce, who's a player's coach, he needs to see you put in effort. Performance is one thing. Effort is the main thing.
Touching on that, I agree. I mean, you were talking to me earlier about Davante Adams, and he was like seen on the sideline relaxing in disbelief while the whole team went to the locker room during halftime. This isn't the first time like Davante's had like an issue. He's kind of got, I don't know if attitude is the right word, but he's kind of got an attitude issue with how he perceives things. And it doesn't make the Raiders' legacy look any better because, the last 5 years, the Raiders have gone through a lot of team stuff. And Gruden, coming to Vegas, they've gone through a lot, and it's a bad look on them when he is like acting out. Kind of similar to how Jamar Chase acted out on the field last week against the Chiefs. He acts out a lot, and you know that he wants Rodgers as his quarterback. Like, everyone knows it, but he can't leave Vegas yet. I think there was like a conspiracy that he was going to get traded to the Jets over the offseason. Don't quote me on that, but I think there needs to be more effort put in from the guys on the Raiders because, like, they're always, I'm not saying they start slow, but they start rough. But then there's times where they don't look like they're trying. And not saying it's because they lost the Panthers, because, the Panthers, they're the Panthers. But they got to play hard and hustle more.
Yeah, and I'm not going to give Davante a free pass.
Yeah.
But as you mentioned with the whole Aaron Rodgers situation, he wanted out of the Packers because they weren't giving him the money he needed, just like the Jamar Chase situation. He went to Derek Carr, his Fresno State college teammate. Derek Carr is there for around 13 games. He leaves. They have Jared Stidham. Last year, Jimmy Garoppolo, you can see in the Netflix receiver series, which is a spinoff of quarterback, which everyone should take a listen to. He wasn't happy. He was upset. And I can understand. As a receiver, you want the ball. You want to affect the game, especially when you're open. And Davante is confident. To be a wide receiver, you need to be cocky, and you need to be a bit of a diva. That's some way that I've kind of evolved my thinking about NFL players is when you're a receiver.
Star receiver.
You
have an ego.
You need to want the ball. That's just a fact. You can't be passive. You need to be aggressive.
Look at Odell. Like, ever since the known one-handed catch, ego. Big ego. And it's like made him even better.
Yeah, and I think that when you mentioned Davante, there's this video of Antonio Pierce and the Raiders and the Panthers running into the locker room at halftime when the Raiders were down by a lot of points. Davante was there was a sigh. He was helmet off, just basically slouching on the bench of the Raiders sideline. You can feel for him, but he's got to go back into the locker room.
I agree.
Because this changes week to week. The week before when they had that incredible comeback win, Gardner Minshew, him, Brock Bowers, the defense, Max Crosby, in Baltimore against the Ravens, you can see in the postgame, Davante's happy. He's like, I love Gardner. This is my team. Pierce develops this mentality and instills it in us. The next week, he's like, get me out of here. Davante does not want to be here. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a deadline move, but what do you think?
It's hard to feel for him because, he left Green Bay because of money. It's hard to feel because he chose to go to a team that was struggling at the time and looking for help. And he was looking to be, the number one guy, which he is. But that comes with a cost. That doesn't mean, next season immediately you're going to go to the playoffs. It takes time to do that. It's part of a franchise. It takes time to build it. And it's his choice. I do feel for him. I know it sucks to lose and be in a struggling franchise for so long. But again, that was his choice to go there.
Yeah, and the question for me is, how are you going to earn the respect of your coach if you're not going to put all the effort in? Regardless of if you're a practice squad trying to make the 53 or someone that's going for all pros every year. Yeah. And this has happened too many times, regardless of the situation, for Davante just being upset, really just slouching. And not really caring. And I hate to say he doesn't care, but it seemed like that at times. Also, the Jack Jones situation, Pierce needs to get his players to buy in because there are players in the Raiders team like a Max Crosby and a Gardner Minshew who are fan favorites and will always give 110%, if not more. But
I think Max Crosby's great. I think he is the face of the franchise actually for the last, maybe 3 or 4 years. I think he puts in that work and you see that. He's a great athlete and you don't always see someone on the defense side as the face of a team, but he's definitely the face of the team.
Yeah, and I'm glad we talked about NFL. We're going to move on to
the NHL.
NHL. Let's take a look.
Yeah, behind it is I called him and I wanted to know if he wanted to come out. It's pretty close to home here as far as with his family and all and what's going on there. He's a coach. First time I met him was today. I never met Johnny and Matt. I never met them in my travels as a coach.
As you see on Monday, former Blue Jackets head coach, current head coach of the Philadelphia Flyers, John Tortorella, was asked about calling Guy Gaudreau, father of late Johnny and Matt Gaudreau, out for practice and coming out to help the team. I think it was a really, really good idea. I'm happy that this happened. I cannot imagine what it was like for Guy Gaudreau to lose both his sons the day before his daughter's wedding. And, it had to mean a lot to him. I mean, Torts said, he was pretty hesitant at first. And I believe that. I mean, it only happened a few weeks ago, and I'm sure he's still, recovering and shaky from all this stuff. But again, for someone who's Guy's a coach at home in New Jersey, but it's therapeutic to be out there and to do what you love. And I think it was a sign of respect and professionalism to even just give him a call and be like, hey, we want you to come out and help, especially with a team like Torts, unfortunately never got to meet John or Matt in his endeavors of coaching over the last, 10 year. And I think it was a really good time to just show what it's we need peace in the world. And this kind of brought in some security for the Gaudreau family and the Flyers, because somewhere around the world, someone was a teammate of one of the two players. And it's just such a tragedy that this happened. Even as a Blue Jackets fan, it stings. I remember where I was when I heard the news. It still stings. And it doesn't matter if the player's your best player, your worst player, or any player. It's still a part of a team. I mean, to me, I feel the Blue Jackets and the sport teams I cheer for are like family to me. Something I grew up in, something I've been watching for years, and I've invested countless hours in. And this isn't the first time over the last few years someone in the Blue Jackets organization's passed away. So the team is definitely taking a different approach to this than what happened a few years back to Matthias Kivlenieks. And I like how the team's approaching it. Every team in the NHL is being so respectful. And I give a lot of props to the Blue Jackets and the Calgary Flames organizations over the last few weeks. You have any comments, Coach?
I think that for someone as myself who doesn't know that much about hockey and is trying to get more involved, I guess I would first say the hockey's an aggressive sport. Yeah. And maybe I wouldn't think just like football, you could see these tributes and these payments of respect. But when I was reading about this, for John Tortorella to do this really summarizes who he is,
yeah,
and what hockey is as a whole. I know that in Canada, it's an amazing game, and here it's an amazing game around the world, and people just want to play, and it's on the ice, and it's fun, and it's competitive, and it is a tragedy what happened to the Gaudreau brothers, and I know you were really upset about it, and it's unfortunate because they were way too young.
Yeah.
And there was it was a DUI. Someone was driving.
Someone was.
Yeah.
The two brothers were biking in New Jersey the night before their sister's wedding, and they were in a bike lane. Some driver tried passing two cars, and a car moved out of the way, and the drunk driver sped up and hit them. So that's kind of the scene that happened in. But
Yeah.
you know, hockey is a big community. I wouldn't even say big. It's a small community. It's a small sport that I wish was more televised and talked about, because I believe that hockey is the most unified sport. I think you can get more friends and families to come together for moments like this, because I wouldn't say something like, if something like this happened in football, I don't know if teams would come together because of, hatred. But like, no matter what, every team is supporting Calgary and Columbus through this really dark time. And really shout out to the Buffalo Sabres. The other night, the Blue Jackets played in Buffalo for the first preseason game. And out of the 50-50 raffle that they do in Buffalo, all the donations were going towards the John and Matt Gaudreau Foundation.
Yeah, and I think that it is so important to prolong their life, because something like this, getting their dad, who is a coach, as you mentioned, to come out for a practice is just a small thing, but it can go a long way for someone who's grieving. And I think that we just really have to think about cherishing these moments and being grateful for what we have and really helping people out. And this has nothing to do with sports, but I just know that it was a tragedy. And seeing this, I didn't know, because it happened a couple weeks ago when I was still training camp and preseason hadn't started yet. I didn't know how many tributes, or even if there were to be any tributes, because it didn't happen during the season. But I'm so happy to hear that the Flyers head coach did this and other teams will follow.
Moving on, we're going to go back to the NFL. We're going to go touch on Andy Dalton and the Panthers' first win. What are your thoughts on it?
Incredible.
Yeah.
What he did, I know that some people were upset that Bryce Young was benched, but
I thought it was a smart move.
Yeah.
I mean, Andy Dalton was the quarterback I grew up with and cheering for the Bengals my whole childhood. I think he was outstanding. He threw 3 touchdowns, went for 300 yards. He's the only quarterback to do that yet this season. It shows a lot coming off the bench. A guy we haven't really heard from in the last few seasons, I guess. It was great. Let's take a look at what he had to say.
I mean, it shows what we can do. I think that's for us. It's like, all right, we showed what our standard is now. We know what we can do, and the goal is to be able to prove that each week. And for us, this was a big win, first one of the year, and now it's like, okay, let's go. We know the possibilities out there. We got to go play to that standard.
You can just see how happy he is.
Yeah.
I know that after that, he embraced his family, and someone that many people didn't even realize was still in the league, was in the Bengals for a long time, Panthers, then went to the Cowboys, then back to the Panthers. This guy's been in the league for a while, and I think that the assumption about him early in his career, which was relatively true, was that he was a successful quarterback in the regular season, was never able to win in the playoffs. And
he never won a single game
Exactly.
in the postseason for the Bengals.
And I'm not going to say the Panthers will be successful, because I think we know they won't. But for him just to come in with those veterans, getting Deontay Johnson going, Adam Thielen, those players are happy. Defense excited, maybe brings up some fan attendance, just smiling. I mean, I love to see these quarterbacks like Geno Smith, Andy Dalton, and Sam Darnold get into these situations. Many people don't believe in them. And really what I love is, what does Andy Dalton have to lose? When he came in,
He's nothing.
if he throws 4 picks, so what? He's had a good career. He's getting paid. But if he plays great, he gets all this fame.
Panthers' name's brought up
Exactly.
again. I mean, I don't remember how many wins they had last year. Did they have 1 or 2?
2, I think.
I mean, they're halfway to that mark now. That says something. I think he really described the way, like, the reporter kind of asked it wasn't even a question, it was more of a comment. And then he was asked, like, what is, this, what does this comment mean? And he, like, said, this is the first one of the year, and they know what they're capable of now doing. Now they have to play that standard. They look like a different team. Not 100% better, but they looked like a competitive team who's going out there to play real football. Not even at home. It was in Vegas, too. I think it shows a lot about the Panthers. Maybe Bryce Young isn't the fit in Carolina. I mean, we'll learn more about that over, the season and see what happens from here on. But I really like the way that he spoke about it. It shows, like, they're able to play. Let's keep this consistent.
Yeah, and Dalton wants to let it fly.
Mm-hmm.
He wants to throw it. He's called the Red Rifle for a reason.
His
people like
guy
you,
was AJ Green.
Exactly.
All of Cincinnati.
People like you, as a Bengals fan, grew up with him, airing out to AJ Green, Mohamed Sanu, Marvin Jones.
Mm-hmm.
And some of these throws were not simple. The Adam Thielen over the middle for 30 yards, this kind of lob touch pass around 9 yards out on the run to Deontay Johnson, one of the best throws I've seen all season long. And it shows you that if you have an arm, you're not losing it. Yes, there are situations, as an older quarterback, especially as a pocket passer like him, may be more difficult. But these players, at any time they want, if they have all the right pieces around them and they're confident in themselves, they can make something happen. The same thing with Joe Flacco last year.
Mm-hmm.
And it won't result in wins, and I'm not going to say that I'll be right about that, but I will be right about that because the Panthers, unfortunately, do not have a great team and an organization around them at this point. But what Andy Dalton did also got Dave Canales, their rookie head coach, excited. He runs into the locker room, so happy, energy, getting their players fired up. And what you need for the Panthers is just to have some hope because you're going to get a high draft pick, continue to build on that. We'll see what happens with Bryce Young. But if these receivers who are paying a lot of money to and made the trade for Deontay Johnson to are comfortable and want to work with him, you got to keep him in.
Yeah.
So that will conclude.
I have actually two questions for you.
Sorry.
Little discussion here.
Yeah.
NFL's looked a little different. There's a lot of teams like San Francisco and Dallas, 1-2, Cincinnati, 0-3, Kansas City, 3-0. There's a lot of like wishy-washy going on with teams right now. Obviously, it's only week 3 going into week 4. What are your thoughts on the teams that are struggling right now?
I think before I answer that question, I'm going to talk about circumstances for a second.
Mm-hmm.
What many people don't realize, and I'm not going to hate on the Chiefs because I think they're the best team in the league. Patrick Mahomes still the best quarterback by a mile, which he will be for as long as he plays.
Yeah.
If a couple things did not go their way, they would be 0-3.
Yeah.
The Isaiah Likely foot, the Bengals pass interference, which I do think was a pass interference, but there were a lot of factors going into that. And honestly, a missed block by Tyler Algier, which a lot of people aren't talking about, on the Bijan Robinson run by the Falcons last week. And they are 3-0, but there's many teams that look better. And the Ravens, I still think are looking good. I think they just blew that game against the Raiders and let the Cowboys get back in as the Cowboys normally do, but end up blowing it at the end. I'm not so worried for some teams that are 1-2. And
I'm a little worried for San Francisco.
Yes.
Just because of CMC. It's been more aware that his Achilles, right?
Yeah.
Is now gotten worse over this last week and a half now. Which kind of like shows a little stress because now a little more people have to put in more work. They should have been more public about all this stuff going in the season because I know a lot of people were confused with fantasy, specifically week 1. Because like it was literally like 30 minutes before the game, it was announced that he wasn't playing, and it wasn't mid-game people found out why, and I think teams need to be more public about it and less, like, don't hide it as much, because at the end of the day, it's like, it's just a player being injured. Like it's like, yeah, he's their superstar, but people like need to know, reporters need to know for their own jobs. I'm not so concerned with the teams that are 1 and 2. I'm not really even concerned about the Bengals being 0-3. I'm just, I hope the refs can open their eyes a little bit and make some good calls.
I agree. Maybe that was a shot at the refs. I think I have to send you an email or something.
One more topic to discuss with you. Let's go to the NCAA really quick. Hoosiers looking to play the Terrapins this week. 4-0. What are your thoughts on the Charlotte game last week?
It was incredible. Another high-scoring output. Defense is ferocious. Running the ball. Rourke is incredible in play action. He's getting a lot of Heisman watch.
Yeah.
Takes, and I think we should hold it right there for a second because of the competition they played. But being 4-0, they haven't started 4-0 in the longest time. Curt Cignetti is a rookie head coach for this program, even though he's been doing it for a long time. No other coach has done that.
Commenting on
the Hoosiers,
the Hoosiers really quickly. I read they have scored, I want to believe, 202 points over these 4 games. Last year, they only scored a total of 266 points through the whole season. And this is light work for Coach Sig. Shows what he's about and shows his mindset about winning.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, it is truly remarkable. And regardless of the competition, if you're putting up consistently 50 points a game, that means the defense cannot figure you out. I don't care what competition you're playing. That means that the offense coordinator is cooking up plays. Players are confident. The offensive line, which had a lot of questions at the beginning of the year because their starting right guard was out for the year.
Yeah.
With a new fifth-year senior, Curtis Rourke, coming in, inexperienced in this type of offense, there are a lot of questions. But Coach Cignetti, it was interesting. I was up late last night, unfortunately, and I was watching this press conference by Coach Cignetti when he was introduced by Pam Whitten in December as a new head coach. And it was just a lot of, I'm here to win, look at my record, that's all it's going to say. And he was talking about the past, but he was basically saying, I don't care if you doubt me, I'm taking this Hoosiers job because people forget he could have been set for life in the next 10 years, being a head coach, being one of the highest paid coaches in that division in the Sun Belt for JMU.
Yeah.
But he said he specifically wanted a challenge. He wants to challenge Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, USC.
This is a big challenge this week. It's only the second Big Ten opponent we're playing, and I think Maryland is in a similar position to us. I would say they're a little better. I mean, I went to the Ohio State-Maryland game last year. Maryland put up a good fight against Ohio State. Given Tua's brother was the quarterback at the time, he's transferred out from Maryland now, but I think this week will prove a lot. I think it could show we can play our conference, we can beat them, and we'll see if we're ranked by the end of the week. So,
yes, and it's going to be very exciting. I know that it's Parents' Weekend, so a lot of parents will be there. We're going to be there. I think a lot of students will show out. I think that it should be a culture change. I'm not going to say sold out, but Memorial Stadium should not look empty.
Shout out Show Dog. It's coming to the game this week, too.
Yes, I'm really excited. It's going to be a good time. And thank you for bringing up those points at the end. We are so happy that all of you listened to episode 2 of the Podium. Seth, do you have any final remarks?
Just tell someone that you love them today. It's important that someone hears that every day. And go Hoosiers.
Thank you guys for tuning in. Find us on YouTube at IUSTV Podcasts and IUSTV Podcasts on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Honestly, wherever you find your podcast, the sky's the limit. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you.